So I guess I should start from the beginning. When I first took over Twitter and rebranded it to X, I thought, let's shake things up. Traditional verification, that blue check mark, had become this gated club. Journalists, celebrities, public figures, mainstream media types. I asked myself, why should it be a privilege reserved only for the establishment? Why not democratize verification? Let people pay for a verified status if they met basic requirements. Profile photo, display name, phone number, and give them the same badge. Simpler. Fairer. That was the plan. But now, after this enforcement of the Digital Services Act, the European Commission has decided that what I did was deceptive. They slapped a fine of 120 million euros on X. According to them, giving anybody who pays the ability to have a blue check without a rigorous identity verification process misleads users into believing that check marks still mean this is real, this is who they claim to be. They call that a deceptive design. They say that this change exposes users to impersonation, scams, and manipulation. Basically, the trustworthy symbol has been watered down, maybe dangerously so, but that's not all. The European Commission also accused X of failing to provide proper transparency around advertising. Under the DSA, platforms must maintain an ads repository that shows who funded an ad, what the content is, what the topic is, so that researchers and the public can scrutinize what's being pushed, why it's being shown to whom. The Commission says X's ads repository lacked that information, and even worse, it imposed delays, child process barriers that made the repository inaccessible. That, they argue, violates advertising transparency requirements. And finally, my X, was found to have restricted access to public data for independent researchers. Under the DSA, researchers should be able to access public platform data, such as public posts, engagement data, maybe metadata, to study systemic risks like misinformation, scams, election interference, coordinated campaigns. But the rules put in place by X, terms of service, technical barriers, delays, made it effectively impossible for researchers to get the data. The Commission considered that a serious breach of obligations. So, 120 million euros. Broke down roughly as 45 million euros for the blue check verification violation, 35 million euros for the ad transparency siege ads repository breach, and 40 million euros for the failure to give researchers access to data. They emphasize that this is not a censorship ruling. According to them, it's about protecting users, preventing scams, deception, misinformation, ensuring transparency and accountability. From my perspective, I have to say, I was trying to change how social networks and the idea of verification worked. I believed that by letting more people get verified if they wanted and paid for it, we'd reduce elitism, broaden access, and let the crowd decide who carries influence, not just legacy media or famous persons. I get that this undermines the old meaning of verified, but the world changes. People adapt. The EU's decision, though, it sends a strong signal to me, to other platforms, to anyone wanting to shake up the norms. It says, even if you own the platform, even if you want to democratize access, you must follow rules designed to protect users and maintain transparency. Maybe I underestimated how much weight those old norms still carried. Or maybe I thought the world was different. So now X has a deadline. We have 60 days to propose changes to that blue check system, 90 days to show a plan for ad transparency and researcher data access, or else risk more penalties under the DSA's up to 6% global revenue rule. I don't know whether I'll roll it back completely or find a compromise, but I do know this. What started as a rebellious attempt to reshape social media just collided hard with regulators who believe the old guard of trust and transparency still matters. And this fine, huge historic first under the DSA, might mark the beginning of a much broader reckoning for all big platforms. So, after the fine dropped and every headline on earth screamed, Elon Musk fined again, you'd think I'd sit back, panic, maybe call a lawyer and mutter something dramatic like, "This is the end." But honestly, that's not how my brain works, because when something pushes against me, my instinct is to push back harder and try to understand the physics of the collision rather than the politics behind it. So I looked at the European Commission statement, again, line by line, almost like debugging a system failure at SpaceX or trying to figure out why a rocket is spinning when it should be stable. And I kept thinking about this idea they were drilling into the world, that the blue check mark was some sacred symbol, some holy artifact of digital identity that I had supposedly corrupted, as if it were a medieval royal seal instead of a pixelated badge drawn in 2010. And I found myself wondering why nobody ever questioned the old system where journalists and celebrities just got special treatment while regular people were told to sit quietly in the digital back row. So yes, I flipped the system. I made verification something anyone could access. And to me that felt like progress, not deception. But apparently in the eyes of regulators, it was some crime against structure, against trust, against a legacy system that somehow grew roots deep enough to be considered law. Then there was the whole data access issue. Researchers saying they couldn't get the information they needed. The commission saying we were cutting them off. But from my perspective, we were dealing with real threats, scraping attacks, bots, foreign influence, operations trying to extract massive amounts of data from the platform. And it's funny how regulators love transparency in theory, but never have to deal with the actual cybersecurity consequences when millions of hostile actors are pinging your servers at scale. And while they say they want research access, what they're really asking for is open doors into incredibly sensitive systems, basically demanding we weaken our defenses at the same time they blame us for not catching every misinformation campaign on Earth. So it's like they want the dam to hold while insisting we punch a giant window into it. And don't even get me started on the ads repository complaints. As if every ad on X doesn't exist publicly already. As if the entire world can't screenshot and analyze any piece of promoted content within seconds. But apparently, if the formatting doesn't match the exact bureaucratic template written by committees in Brussels, then we're suddenly violating something monumental, which makes me wonder whether the actual concern is user safety or just the maintenance of regulatory power structures. But what hit me wasn't the money, not the 120 million euros, because honestly, compared to launching rockets or building electric cars or keeping a global platform running, that's not the thing that keeps me awake. What hit me was the message under the message. The reminder that innovation always drags a long tail of resistance behind it. That every time you try to change something at scale, you get regulators, commentators, institutions, legacy media, all pulling the other way like gravity trying to keep the rocket on the pad, while you're trying to break free of the pull. And yeah, maybe I underestimated how attached people were to symbols like the blue check mark, like the old hierarchy, like the idea that platforms should operate like digital governments instead of marketplaces of information. But what am I supposed to do? Stop pushing, stop experimenting, accept that the digital world has to stay frozen because the analog world wrote laws before the digital one was even born. That's not who I am, and it's definitely not why I bought Twitter and turned it into X in the first place. So, part 2 of this story is basically me standing in the middle of the storm, watching regulators flex, watching commentators celebrate, watching people who never built anything tell me how I should run a platform with hundreds of millions of users. And instead of shrinking back, I'm thinking about the next update, the next redesign, the next system that will make this entire debate look ancient. Because the truth is, the digital world moves faster than legislation, faster than headlines, faster than fines. And while the EU might be proud of this symbolic victory, what they don't understand is that every time someone tries to box in innovation, they create the exact conditions for bigger breakthroughs because pressure forces creativity and resistance forces evolution. And maybe one day they'll realize the blue check mark was never the point. The point was that the internet is transforming, platforms are evolving, and you can't regulate your way out of change, no matter how hard you try.